Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to MESA's 2016 Smart Story Awards winners interview. We're glad you're here. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We're glad that you're part of this webcast. For the next hour, we're going to do our best to make this as valuable as we possibly can. We've got some great panelists here. They're going to tell you about their stories. We're glad you're here. Thank you very much for your time and being part of this webcast. Last year, MESA started the Smart Story Awards for the simple reason that a lot of people had a lot of good stories to tell, and we wanted to create a forum to let them tell those stories. Stories about what they're doing in their manufacturing companies, how they're driving manufacturing value, what they're doing with smart manufacturing. There was just so many stories out there that we wanted to create this forum to let them tell those stories. And we've got hundreds of stories that were submitted as part of this Smart Story Awards program. What you're going to be hearing today is absolutely the best of the best. The 3 stories that were selected by industry as the winners, as the absolute best of the best here. But I'd encourage you to go out to MESA to look at the hundreds of stories that are out there, because they're all very good, and there were a lot of stories that I tell you are just as good as the ones we're going to be hearing today. So I'd encourage you to take a look at those. So again, we've got the best of the best today. Those were selected by industries based on votes and number of downloads as being the best, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. So again, much thanks for your time in the next hour as we get into this. One thing I'd like to mention, first of all, a big shout out to our sponsor, Cisco. They were our sponsor for this Smart Story Awards program for the last year, so much thanks to them. Also, much thanks to our media sponsors that are here, and much thanks to MESA's Platinum and Gold Keystone sponsors. And just so you know, my name's John Clemens. I'm the Director of Manufacturing IT with Maverick Technologies. I'm also on the Board of Directors with MESA, and I'm Chairman of the Marketing Committee. Also with me today from MESA is Mike Yost. Mike Yost has been the President of MESA for the last several years, and he's going to be helping me out as part of the panel and as part of this presentation today. So, a couple things on housekeeping. Everybody is logged into the webinar. You can open and close your panel. You can, and that's the way it works. You can submit your questions in the question box. We're going to have essentially the first half of the presentation is going to be our 3 winners telling their stories, and the last half of the presentation today is going to be question and answer. So please ask your questions, and we will do our best to get to them at the end of the session. And as usual, we are recording this, and we're going to be posting this entire presentation and the slides to our resource library, so they will be available. So a quick agenda. We're going to talk about MESA just for a second. I'm going to do some introductions. We have 3 presentations from our 3 winners, and then we've got the Q&A session at the end. So at this point, again, I'd like to introduce Mike Yost, the President of MESA, and let him talk for a couple minutes about MESA as we move into our presentations.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that, and welcome everybody. Thank you on a few levels. One, as John mentioned, being here with us today, and 2, helping support this program. So whether you submitted, put your story in, or were part of the group of folks who downloaded, which helped us to decide on the winners, it's very important, and it ties in with what MESA is trying to do. So I just want to take literally the next 3 or 4 minutes and just introduce MESA for those of you that are not intimately familiar with MESA or maybe don't know MESA at all. We are a 25-year-old nonprofit industry association. So we're made up of volunteers. John already mentioned that he has a full-time day job in addition to working as one of the leaders inside of MESA. And we talk from this model perspective that's on your screen here about delivering value first by speaking with the voice of industry's practitioners. So when you step inside of MESA, you're stepping into a safe place, and everybody leaves their commercial hats off and steps inside to bring their domain expertise and to share ideas, to network with people, and to really focus on the ultimate goal, which is to build bridges of understanding from the plant to the enterprise. That P2E logo is something we came up with probably 15 years ago, and it's still an issue that that people are working to solve today. Certainly the technologies have changed. Some of the terminology has changed. We now talk about smart and things like that. But really the approach from our perspective is still centered on what is the business value at the intersection between manufacturing and IT. And as far as levers that we have to push, we talk in terms of the three buttons there in the middle of your screen. The first being networking, the opportunity to meet like-minded peers in industry and share best practices, share contacts, and really learn from each other and with each other. Our groups tend to vary in size and vary in geography. We're a global organization, but many of the groups formalize into either regional or topical working groups, and the topical working groups create content that is peer-reviewed, non-commercial, we were a very well-kept secret for a long time, and we were working to take what MESA knows to the outside world, and education is at the forefront of doing that. So if you go to the next slide, please. I mentioned on the previous slide, our goal is to build bridges of understanding. We talk about that because our focus is education, our focus is networking, our focus is information sharing. 25 years ago when we started, there were serious technological challenges in connecting the plant to the enterprise, connecting the business of manufacturing to the plants, to the enterprise, to the operations, and many of those technological challenges have alleviated themselves, excuse me, and now we're at a point where rather than technology holding us back, it's at a point where it's pulling us forward faster than we're comfortable. So that's why we believe the biggest role we can play in industry as MESA is to really help people with an awareness, with an understanding, the business value, and then going from there to figure out the technological approach and all the specs. So we talk about driving clarity broadly about what is the role and what is the value of deploying modern information technologies into production operations. And notice I didn't say MES, I didn't say smart manufacturing. It's much broader than that. And so regardless of what you call it, anytime where technology intersects with manufacturing, that's the place where MESA focuses on the business value. Next slide, please. So John mentioned at the top, what this program is all about, and we have these pillars here that really represent what I was just talking about. What can we do as an association, as a group of like-minded individuals? What can we do? And it's built on that foundation of being a safe harbor, non-commercial place with the levers that I talked about, and really focused and driven by what are the business drivers that our manufacturer, producer, members, and the broader community faces. or what do you face? And there's a gap to what technology you select and then what you call them. Our umbrella is Manufacturing Enterprise Solutions, but there are many different names you can put at the top there. And really our focus and where this program comes from is three primary areas. There's preparing the marketplace to understand the business value, to have a common vocabulary, to be able to talk about value. And those things don't happen naturally, and that's one of the reasons that this program was created. Also, from a solutions guidance perspective, that context to work between the business and the plants, the operations. There's guidance or efforts we put forward there, and then lastly, preparing the practitioners so that these types of solutions, these operations can scale and support businesses locally and globally. These are all areas that we focus from MESA that really have very little to do with the technology themselves. And again, the focus of today and the Smart Story Awards falls into the first category of being able to talk about the business value. So with that, I will get out of the way. I will turn the ball back over to John and let you hear the folks that you came here to hear from today. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Mike. So we've got three presenters here with us. Our first presenter is Srivatsa Ramaswamy. He is the Chief Technical Officer of 42Q. Our second presenter is going to be Alex Herbert. He's the Manager of Strategic Accounts for Kepware Technologies. And our third presenter is Francisco Lobo, the CEO of Critical Manufacturing. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Srivatsa for our first presentation, which is entitled Flexible MES Cloud Solution Lowers Total Cost and Increases Manufacturing Velocity. Srivatsa is all yours.
Thank you, John. Good morning, all. First, before I get into actual content, I'd like to thank the MESA board and the MESA community for participating in this event. I also want to say congratulations to the other winners. Proud to be part of this team. What I'm going to cover over the next few minutes is really, go through what we mean by flexible cloud MES solution and how it actually contributes to the lowering the total cost of ownership and increasing manufacturing velocity. So a quick 1-minute introduction about who 42Q is. 42Q provides a MES solution, which is part of the reason why we are here. It's a cloud-based solution. And we, as a company, are a business unit of Sanmina. For folks who are not familiar with Sanmina, we are a Tier 1 contract manufacturer. We support industries like telecommunications, medical, automotive, defense and aerospace, and 2016 revenues was over $16.5 billion. 42Q officially was launched in 2016. Although we were only recently launched, this solution was developed over 20 years at Sanmina for internal manufacturing purposes. I'd like to start with, I know we're going to talk about flexibility and total cost, but I'd like to start with one question that I always get asked. People ask me, is cloud MES real? So I want to put forth a few things that kind of is visible to you as an audience. The first and foremost is that today on 42Q platform, we have over 50 factories running in 15 countries. If you look on the right, one of the key things, the message we are delivering is flexibility. And one of our large customers has over 1,200 products launched using the solution. What that means for you is that you're able to bring in a products of wide variety in a real fast manner. Similarly, I'd also like to quote, for regulated industries, as many of you know, like medical FDA compliance, for example, being in the platform allows you to get faster velocity because you're able to share the valid regulatory compliance validations across multiple customers. So I think what I would tell you in the end is these numbers illustrate that companies are successfully operating, and I'd like to bring it back to cloud's real. So let's talk a little bit over the next few minutes on what does 42Q provide and how it contributes to the topic of interest here. Next slide, John. Thank you. So I'm going to take the approach as, process, tools, adoption, and implementation, and give you a quick view into that. So if you think about the volume of products that are flowing through the solution and put yourself as a factory manager, you have a factory where you manage people, materials, equipment, quality records, and routings, right? If you have 150 million widgets that are passing through your factory and years pass by and you get audited, you really, you really want to be able to know what is where when. The second part is, if you really want to successfully implement control so you can guarantee quality for your customers, the big thing that you have to think about is you have to enable the people and the machines to operate in a mistake-proof environment. And that's really the key message I'll give you is whenever you're looking at an MES solution, look into a solution that allows you to force a quality framework that also has the flexibility that can meet your requirements. Next slide, John. Next slide, please. So let's now talk about the tool side. You know, if you look at a large company that has multiple factories, it's not uncommon to see executives travel all over the world. If you're a small company, you can also see that if you had OT technology and IT technology independent, you're not connected, and hence the transparency doesn't exist. Being in the cloud, one of the things the solution enables you to do is get visibility into the factory anytime, and having simple solutions that can provide you with, notifications. For example, when the yield falls below a threshold, you want to get notified. If somebody hasn't responded to that, you want to get escalated. You want to make the visualization easy so people can respond to events as well as the executives can get a perspective is one of the key pre-built solutions that is important for you to understand on how you can scale your deployment and achieve velocity. Next slide, John. I talked a little bit about capabilities. Let me now touch upon adoption. I'm sure people on the call have a lot of experience with different types of MES and have heard a lot of different events that happen with MES deployment. But let me share with you a little bit from my experience. If you take a factory, a change in the factory with a full-blown MES deployment is very significant. When I say very significant, complexity, so think about you're going to change the way people operate. You're going to change the way how machines operate. You're going to change the way the product flows. You're going to change the operating methodology in a manner that it has to be controlled. The flexibility inside the factory for operators to change based on their own individual viewpoints as opposed to a predefined methodology is getting reduced. So when you think about a change like that, the most important thing that it needs to stand out for you is change management. So one of the key things that you want to think about to really achieve the velocity is you don't want to try to boil the ocean. You really want to start with a focused small opportunity, and you want to be successful in the opportunity, realize the value, and then you want to reinvest that value into the next opportunity. So it's really important as you're thinking about how do you achieve velocity, it's really important for you to achieve value sooner, because that achievement of value enables people to adopt change, embrace change faster, and you eventually reach your end state. So as you think about MES deployments, one of the key things that you want to think about is what is a small scope that's a higher priority that gives a large payback faster, and you want to achieve that value, and then you want to incrementally add. Next slide, please. So let's talk about implementation. So, before I get into implementation itself, if you look at the capabilities, you want to have the ability to choose something that's important for you, and then you want to expand on it. So there's flexibility in the solution. You want to be in the cloud. You don't have to worry about backups, restores, or hardware upgrades, things like that, because that's taken care of, and so that takes it out. So then the most important thing that's left is how do you get to it faster? So what you see here is our implementation plan. And some key highlights. We follow the standard, Project Management Institute-based methodology of initiation, discovery, planning, execution, control, and closure. And you have stage gates to show where you are. But something important to note here, if you look at this plan, there's a few things I want to highlight here. One, there is no hardware or software install activities here, because in a multi-tenancy cloud environment, you sign up, you start to set up your route templates. So our methodology here happens is that at initiation, we agree on the scope. On discovery, you look at what is the assets in the to-be process, so that enables you to understand the configurations needed and the training plan needed. Then you basically agree on the solution design. Then you set up the routes, templates, and get started, conduct a test. Once the tests are completed, conduct CRP, and you go to implementation. The key point here is that with a cloud environment and having a robust methodology, so that's pointed out here, you're able to achieve your delivery cycle in a fast and credible manner. In addition, you're also eliminating the indirect value add activities of hardware and software that you have. So I just want to bring back to the topic. We talked a little bit about flexibility of capabilities. We talked about how that helps you reduce the total cost of ownership, and we talked about how how the solution gives you velocity. And I want to leave you with, cloud's real, and as a community, you can achieve this as well if somebody is able to do it. That's kind of what I'd leave you with. Thank you.
Thank you, Srivas. We appreciate that. Our next presenter is Alex Herbert. He's the Manager of Strategic Accounts for Kepware Technologies, and his presentation is all about IoT Gateway provides Forcia with data to improve traceability. Alex, it's all yours.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for joining this morning, and thank you, MESA, and congratulations to everyone else, the other panelists this morning. So really, what I'm going to cover today is going through a really exciting story that's been a partnership with Forcia and Kepware Technologies over the last year and a half, building out the solution that now is going to become a standard for them globally. So to give you an idea of who Forcia is, they are one of the world's largest automotive equipment suppliers, with several major business units being seating, emissions control systems, interior systems, and exteriors. About 100,000 employees in 34 different countries with 330 sites globally, and those are production facilities, as well as 30 R&D centers. So when you look at a company of this size in the industry they're in, the demand for production is ever increasing, and more over the last few years. Now we're seeing an emphasis on the demand for production data, traceability data, whether for regulatory or just process control. And so when you take a look at what Forcia has gone through, one of the things having a global company with various types of equipment and processes globally, they have disparate PLCs and different types of controllers on the shop floor that are controlling these processes, and they have various types of systems and different MES solutions that had historically been there, as well as providing that data to different automotive suppliers or automakers throughout the world. So one of the challenges was they needed to find a solution that they could standardize on, that's scalable globally, that can provide data in real time to the automakers, as well as improve production, improve processes, and keep their facilities running to meet the needs of their customers. So to step back, Kepware is a software solutions company provider. We build communication software that goes out and essentially connects hardware, so PLCs, to software applications. We've been the middleware communications platform for Forcia for many years. And so some of the solutions that Forcia has been working on in the past have been connecting these disparate controllers through Kepware using our OPC DA interface. So OPC is a common standard interface within industrial automation, heavily in manufacturing, and up to their IJ Core, which is their MES system that's proprietary to Forcia. They actually developed it themselves. And so one of the challenges they had was connecting all this machine and process data to their MES, and then providing data to their automakers, their customers. And so through the process of using OPC-DA, there was months of development effort. That whole architecture was more of needing to keep communications persistent, requesting data all the time, as opposed to the new solution, which I'll get into the details in a minute here, but it really allowed Forcia to, one, provide real-time insights for their customers into the production line, so they could have real-time insight into where their products are, where it is in the line, when it's going to be ready, and if there's any issues or quality concerns, they can address those in real time. So when Kepware released the IoT Gateway, it allowed us to expose data through our communications platform through more IT-centric protocols, which are very common in IoT, for example, REST. And so REST is what IJ Core is built on inherently, and now we're able to expose that data coming from the shop floor up to IJ Core through a RESTful interface, and really improved, one, the development time and effort for Forcia to build that connection and that connectivity. And to give you, a quick backstory on that, this whole proof of concept began probably a little over a year ago down in Brazil in one of their R&D centers, and they took a scope that was a 6-month scope project, which they would have been using the OPC-DA protocol to connect Kepware to IJ Core, and when we narrowed that down to a couple days, and that's huge for a company like Forcia that would have to deploy this globally, potentially to 330 sites. If you imagine a 6-month project each time, that can really be cost inhibitive to solutions of this sort. So when we released the IoT Gateway, it was the aha moment for Forcia. They were able to connect their MES to Kep server, which is connecting to all the machine data, provide that data in real time to their customers, and enable, the parts traceability throughout the entire manufacturing process, satisfying the needs of their customers at the end of the day. So, what we wanted, this is a great example as well as bridging the operations technology with the information technology. So all the IJ Core is built through their IT group, and one of the challenges has been getting them into the manufacturing process to provide seamless connectivity. And with the IoT Gateway, we've exposed the data through protocols that are common in the IT world, and it allows a much seamless process and ease of access to the data. So I think some of the core results and the value of IoT Gateway and IoT solutions that this story provides is one for the internal stakeholders. So they're able to make changes and provide real-time insights on the process itself, on the manufacturing process, to improve product quality, production time, efficiencies. At the same time, they're providing efficiency to their customers, providing them with just-in-time, just-in-sequence data, so they know where their products are, when they're going to be delivered, if there's any quality or issues in that regard in real time without having to request the data. So with the new solution, Kepware, essentially, Kep Server EX, which is the platform that's connecting to all the machine data, is just posting the data to this IJ Core solution as opposed to them having to go out and request it. So it's really making all the communications more streamlined, and it's a solution that Forcia will be able to standardize on globally, being that Kep Server has the ability to connect to hundreds of different types of devices through various types of protocols, and then standardize on that RESTful interface to connect to their MES. So that's really the underlying story here, and with that, I'll pass it on to the next presenter.
All right, Alex, thank you very much. So our next presenter is Francisco Lobo. He is the CEO of Critical Manufacturing. His story is all about manufacturing software for Industry 4.0, embracing change and decentralization. Take it away, Francisco.
All right, thanks, John. So good morning or good afternoon to you all. I'd like to first of all thank MESA very much, MESA board, everyone who helped putting together this Smart Story Award, and especially all the readers who have downloaded the paper and made this the most downloaded paper, so we're very proud of that. So I decided to write this manufacturing software for Industry 4.0 paper, initially upon an advice from our advisory board at Critical Manufacturing. Our advisors, there are MES experts with significant experience, have recommended me to look into Industry 4.0 and see the momentum that this topic was having, especially as we have in our solution many Industry 4.0 elements. I must confess I was a bit skeptical about the topic because it seemed to me that Industry 4.0 was not more but a set of buzzwords and a mixture of technologies that were at different maturity and adoption levels. But then I went to look into more detail into the original reports of the Industry 4.0 working group, also the Smart Manufacturing Leadership Coalition, and reports from additional working groups, and found out that there was a broad consensus about the vision for Industry 4.0. Next slide, please, John. So it was a vision with decentralized autonomous networks of smart products and automated equipment collaborating in smart supply chains. So on one side, we have the evolution of electronics, which is allowing smaller devices with sensors, actuators, communication, and computing power. And these are becoming so affordable that can be attached to basically any product or any equipment, giving it intelligence, capacity to communicate with each other, and essentially autonomy and decision-making capabilities. On the other hand, we have customers that are requesting each time more customized products, which create small lots at the shop floor level, and which at the limit are really unique products, one-off products. Next slide, please. So at the shop floor level, the operations will no longer be centrally controlled, but instead they will be organized according to what is called a shop floor marketplace. And this is essentially a marketplace with demand, which is represented by the smart products who need transformational operations, and supply, represented by equipment which can provide its operations at a given price. So this drawing shows you a simple example of how this works and how the smart products select the equipment for each processing step. Of course, in reality, this would be more complicated than what is shown here. But the message for me was, being MES a centralized solution, with Industry 4.0, the MES as we know it would simply die. So you can understand how big of a problem this would be for an MES provider. But then my thinking process evolved. And in fact, the Industry 4.0 vision cannot be achieved at all without MES. The IoT data needs contextual information that is useful. The shop floor, although having autonomous entities, still needs to be monitored and controlled. And the enterprise or manufacturing-wide processes still need to be followed. Next slide, please. So we still need an MES, but just an evolved MES, or what I like to call an MES on steroids. So first, it needs to support several different connectivity and mobile scenarios. It must seamlessly integrate IoT devices with different capabilities and make them part of the shop floor infrastructure. The operators will have supervision tasks with different mobile apps, fully adapted to each role and to each station. Second, it needs to provide cloud services for different functions and let it be the basis for advanced analytics, both for real-time decision-making or for offline analytics based on big data and machine learning to identify problems and solutions. Third, it must support the decentralization I mentioned before. So the MES can still be a physically centralized solution, but must act decentralized with autonomous agents, whether they are products or tools, operating in this marketplace-like environment. And very importantly, the MES must support the transition from a centralized into a decentralized shop floor, because clearly Industry 4.0 will not happen overnight. Fourth, it must support integration with enterprise processes. although products and machines will talk to each other, we'll still need to have quality processes, logistics, engineering, R&D, maintenance, etc. So there must be a direct link between the shop floor physical operations and business processes. And last but not least, the Industry 4.0 shall operate at the supply chain level, not just the shop floor level. So the MES must ensure visibility, transparency, reliability of operations into the entire supply chain. Next and final slide. So, okay, once we understood what type of MES is required for Industry 4.0, we must also help our customers understand where to start and how to, step by step, build a solution that allows moving towards this vision. This has been briefly touched in the paper, which will now have a sequel, which is a more detailed follow-up paper on the path to Industry 4.0 using MES. And these are the main milestones. So starting with the basics, which is a complete digital mapping of all physical business processes. Once done, we can apply the subsequent tools and functional modules to achieve traceability, real-time visibility, process control, etc. And only then we get into the optimization phase, which includes the optimization itself, but that is also a strong basis for simulation, for virtual or augmented reality scenarios, given the mixture of physical and virtual worlds. And then finally, at the last stage, all collected information is critical to describe, diagnose, and predict problems, and also to prescribe solutions to these problems. So the final message is that this is a journey. It's like building a house, and the work must start with the foundations, only then the pillars, the walls, and then finally the ceiling or the roof. And the work here, which we started with this paper, is to demystify the complexity of Industry 4.0 while explaining the critical importance that MES has to enable this Industry 4.0 journey. That's it on my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francisco. We appreciate that. And much thanks to all three of our presenters. Those are great stories. Now we're going to move into our question and answer period. So to our audience, you can start entering your questions if you haven't already started. I've got a few questions already teed up here and a few questions have been entered, so we're going to do our best to get to them. But the first question I've got to ask Mike this question. Mike, from MESA's point of view, you know, I know the objective of the Smart Story Awards program was to get the stories out there from the manufacturing companies, but these three guys here are all vendors. Are the manufacturers not wanting to tell their stories? What's MESA seeing with that?
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, I mean, that's a reality that I think we face. I have the fortune to get to talk to a lot of different audiences and interact with a lot of people at different levels within the organizations. And whenever I get in front of a leadership group from manufacturers, I talk about the fact that it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge for them to allow their businesses, allow their domain experts, their thought leaders to talk about the value. And you know, we're not talking about giving away the secret sauce of how you compete. You know, your internal process is one from the next. But the fact that you know, MESA's experience over 2.5 decades, it's a very fragmented space with individual type of approaches, both within an individual company as well as within the solution provider community. And so, you know, without more people telling their story, without talking more broadly about the overall value, we end up with people stuck trying to figure it out on their own. So that's really the emphasis behind us creating this program overall. And you know, I think there's significant value as well in the solution providers telling their story. They typically are involved in many different industries and many different companies. They see a lot of different angles to things. They're looking out on the forefront. We heard talked about today different types of communication standards like OPC-DA. We talked about connectivity. We talked about cloud. Talked about Industry 4.0. So the solution provider community is typically looking out at those things more so than the manufacturers are, and there's value in that. And really the work we have to do is we're trying to be the place that can capture those and have a broader conversation around value and really push industry so that the manufacturers are willing to contribute much more to that discussion as well. So it's not a one-sided story, or it doesn't feel out of whack when you sit down and talk about what people are doing in these areas, and the only people that are standing front are the solution providers.
Yeah, Mike, so along these lines, what I think I'd like to do here is I'd like to go back to our three presenters and essentially give them a couple more minutes each to answer that particular question about what is the real business value for the solution that they provided. I mean, we've got a lot of information here about the technology and about the projects were done quickly in a short amount of time and under budget and with that kind of stuff. But I'd really like to hear each one of them give us some details on the real business value of their solution. So I just we'll go back to Srivats.
Thank you, John. First, I think you hit the nail right there. You started with, we talked about speed and we talked about getting there faster and everything. What's the true business value? So the way we see, at least from our point of view, is that there's two or three major contributors to it. The very first and foremost is that, companies are always wanting to improve efficiency. And when I talk about efficiency, it includes yield improvements, throughput improvements, regulatory compliance, all the things that helps you ensure that your cost management is under control and your ability to deliver the product, the quality is well managed. So that's if a typical factory of ours would see a certain percentage improvement in their output delivery. And that percentage depends on the type of industry you are, but there's significant variability in where you are with how you get started, right? So let's say, for example, a factory that has no tools eliminates paper, improves people productivity, thereby sees a result in improvement in capacity, and that can range. It's unbelievable when you see some of the numbers. It can range really as high as 30% in some cases, right? The second part, I think, that we bring to the table that's really important as you think about it as well, is the market's changing. People are talking about delivering things faster, delivering things more personalized. So when you start to look at that, capturing a part of the market share and having the ability to meet that demand is really key. There's a saying in our world that says, if you can plan and meet the demand, that's situation one. But if you can plan and capture the unplanned demand, you build brand loyalty and you ensure that you capture a leadership position in space. I think cloud enables that. So one of our customers, as I mentioned earlier, sees a swing in their business model when they take new projects and they do short-term programs to deliver products. And enabling them to do that has given them presence in the marketplace where they are known to deliver to their customers that speed and velocity where other players would say no. I think that's a huge differentiation that we deliver, right? That's the second part of that. I think the third, what actually is important as well, is as you evolve more and more progress in the space, you want to demonstrate leadership and you want to provide the community to evolve there. I think that's the third piece, which is one of the values that our customers see is they're able to go out and demonstrate to their peers. It's kind of a little bit like birds of the feather, right? So you can demonstrate to your peers how advanced you are and bring the overall community to that. That's more of a soft value. So that's kind of what our customers at least give us feedback.
All right, thank you. All right, Alex, how about you give us your take on business value?
Yeah, so I touched upon some of it, but I would say, for Forcia, one of the biggest was really the development efforts and deployment efforts. And this is no joke. They really, a 6-month project in their old architecture and old scenario would take up to 6 months to develop and deploy, whereas they're able to complete that in just a couple of days. And that's all leveraging, experienced developers within their organization. And when you look at that cost alone, if you can free up those resources from 6 months to 2 days, there's quite a substantial savings and utilize those resources for other projects. And I think on the business value side, there's there's more and more, when you talk to Forcias, they get heavy demands from automakers of your choice. They work with just about all of them, and they get put under the gun for quick and speedy data, and that could be, they're not the only ones that make emissions or interiors or exteriors for that matter. So being able to kind of be an industry leader, be able to provide the most efficient and effective traceability data in real time without having to be demanded for it, I think speaks volumes for the relationships they can make with their customers in satisfying their needs. And then I think on the production side, using that same quick and efficient connectivity and communication methods, they're able to improve their processes rather than looking retroactively at data and making changes. They can make changes in real time based off the fact that they're getting that production data much faster, much more efficient. And I would say, based on the business value again from their whole proprietary MES that they built in house, it's really it's definitely industry leading and cutting edge in the sense that they're using these IT-centric protocols for the connectivity to actually not just monitor a process, but also control a process. And typically we see that those protocols used for process control are more on the OPC standard, which is a client-server architecture where you make requests and solicit responses. And in this manner, functions can just be pushed rather than have to be requested. And I think that's really improving their production and improving their relationships and value to the customers that they serve every day. So I think it's twofold, and it's I don't have the financial statements to prove it, but I would say that based on the statements that I've had from Forcia, they are definitely saving resources and reallocating resources and being more productive and profitable.
All right, thank you, Alice. All right, Francisco, give us your take on this topic.
Yes, so thank you. Well, I think we create value, first of all, by unifying everything around Industry 4.0, and then showing our customers the critical role of MES. Sorry for using the word critical so often. But with tools available for big data, machine learning, simulation, IoT, the value added that is created is tremendous in terms of productivity, quality of products and processes, in terms of delivery reliability, agility, new product introduction. And so essentially what manufacturers understood is that in this new scenario, in the future scenario that is coming, with very small periods, only the most adaptable and agile companies will survive. So the ability to remain competitive in this mass customization or even one-off product environment really relies significantly on the capacity or capability to perfectly map the physical and business processes of manufacturing, which is the very essence of MES systems. And then the MES or the MOM offering, when made more complete, can also incorporate many of the subsequent features and functions in the upper levels of the Industry Path that I had mentioned before. So only now manufacturers are starting to understand Industry 4.0 and the implications that it has. So we can see that from survey results of companies like Gartner or LMS research, the evolution of percentage of respondents that really understand and are planning to do something around these technologies is tremendous. So most manufacturers want to act now, and we as MES MOM solution providers need to help them build a roadmap and explain them what the main blocks are to allow them to drive towards the ultimate vision of Industry 4.0. It may take years or decades to get there, but it will be a continuous process. And the earlier companies engage in it, the earlier they have the benefits from it.
Thank you, Francisco. So what I'd like to do now, everyone, is just ask a few questions. We got a lot of questions coming in here. I'd just like to ask a few of them, so we'll be bouncing around to different people. So this first question here is Francisco. So can you talk a little bit about how what you're talking about there fits in with big data analytics, or even things like virtual reality? and things like that.
Right, yes. As I was trying to explain before, there are two things which are important here. One is that scenarios like virtual reality or augmented reality need, first of all, a very detailed and accurate mapping of the physical and business processes. So only after you do that, you can have then a mixture of the physical world combined with the virtual world and use applications like, I don't know, mobile devices or Google Glass solutions, and you go around the fab and you interact physically, or you see physically the different objects, different materials, different equipment, and you can add information into that so that you have really value-add solutions. At the same time, one of the things which is important is that there was sometimes the notion that around Industry 4.0, all you needed to have would be IoT devices, and they would be connecting into the cloud somehow, and therefore, the MES layers would not be necessary. But that is simply not true, because basically the IoT has no context data. So you may have IoT, for instance, getting out temperature or pressure or other types of indicators, but then if you don't know what is the machine, what product is being manufactured at that time, what type of engineering parameters are being used, and so on, there's no value that is created, and therefore the big advantages that big data and machine learning can have in terms of identifying issues and in terms of providing probabilities and predicting when things will happen, can only create the value that they should once you have this complete set of information. So I think the essence here is that an MES which is able to do this is of critical importance, both for the analysis that can be done in terms of big data and also for the more advanced scenarios in terms of virtual reality, augmented reality, and simulation.
Thank you, sir. All right, this question is for Srivats. Srivats, can you talk a little bit about cloud-based MES in a highly regulated environment such as medical devices, pharmaceutical, that kind of industry?
Absolutely. So, so actually 42Q is prominent in the medical vertical. We actually have, if you look at the regulated environment that the FDA has put in place, you really have the processes around what they call IQ, OQ, and PQ. So in a simplest way to think about it, IQ is infrastructure validation, OQ is the functionality validation of the solution and ensure that it's stable and running, and then PQ is performance qualification. Really, it's like a user acceptance test equivalent, which is your testing at the point of deployment that is working effectively. So one of the things the public cloud, and I want to be careful in qualifying this public cloud, is public cloud environment enables you to do is the vendor can perform the tests that you need to perform for the IQ and the OQ for the server and the application, and extend the test results to the regulatory compliance. As an example, one of our customers is a medical company, and they recently went through an audit, and we basically went through the test cases and the test results and provided evidence of that to the customer at the engagement time. And they have an audit process where when FDA is on site, we get on a video conference and share with them the results. The point to this long story is that in a regulated environment, typically if you had either a private cloud platform or an on-premise platform, you're spending 3 to 6 months per company on regulating that. In the public cloud platform, we can shrink that across all the companies in a consistent manner, and the customers enjoy faster time to market. But it is happening. And we have attended FDA audits successfully, and so I think it's real.
Thank you, sir. This question is for Alex. Alex, a couple of the things I found especially intriguing in your story was dealing with traceability and the smarter and more nimble decision-making processes that the solution was able to support. Could you elaborate on those a little bit?
Yeah, so the traceability, so if you take a manufacturing line, for example, in a seating manufacturing plant, there may be 3 to 4 critical processes or steps along the way to actually produce this part. And there can be different requirements for a specific seat. There can be regulatory requirements that need to be met. And the improved traceability really, in this case, means that rather than sending a part through an entire process or maybe 2 or 3 steps along the way and then looking at data and making changes along the way, you can actually see the part being made in real time and make adjustments if needed. Or if there was a regulatory requirement that wasn't being met, as opposed to producing parts that'll be bad quality, you can stop the process, make the change in real time, and get back to production. So, improving the part traceability in that regard internally is where, Forcia saw some benefits, but as well, more importantly, their customers are, kind of on the sidelines waiting for these parts to be produced and delivered, and them having access into that data in real time, improving their access to that, allows them to plan accordingly, understanding where their parts are, what the quality is, what the production speed is, and when the delivery should happen. So it's really allowed, prior to the other communication methods they used to use, where you would kind of have to request a change and wait for a response. This is a much quicker method and allows them to provide the data more quickly and efficiently, make quicker decisions, enabling quicker changes on a line to prevent more bad quality parts, which obviously, bad quality equals there's a cost associated with that. So it eliminates the cost of potentially larger quantities of bad quality parts, and it allows their customers to, make decisions on their end depending on when they should receive a product and the quantity and quality of that product.
All right, thank you, sir. So we're almost out of time. We just got a couple of minutes left. At this point, I'd like to turn it back over to Mike to say a couple words about MESA and to wrap it up. But before we do, I'd just like to, first of all, thank everyone that has participated in our webcast this morning. Thank you to our audience. Thank you especially to our 3 winners. And again, congratulations to the 3 of you. We appreciate your hard work and dedication in putting your stories together and in being the best of the best as part of our Smart Story Awards program. We would like to encourage everybody in the audience to think about participating in this program. We're starting the next round of this program up shortly. We would really encourage you to be part of the program, to submit your stories. And for those of you that haven't had a chance to go out to MESA.org and look at all the stories that are out there, we'd encourage you to do so. So, Mike, you got about 2 minutes to wrap us up here. But again, thank you so much to our panelists, and especially thank you to our audience for being part of this. So, Mike, wrap us up here.
Excellent. Well, again, I'd like to echo what everybody said and thank everybody for being here and for contributing to the program overall and to contributing to the efforts that MESA has been and continues to undertake as far as educating the masses on what all of this is about. The core value proposition that has been espoused for years hasn't changed a whole lot. Still trying to make parts better and do things faster, be more responsive, align production with demand, have visibility and traceability. Those are all old themes, but we know the impact. We can see the impact being recognized on a global scale at an enterprise level. And really, I think some of the approaches that were discussed today and some of the folks that are contributing to the conversation are really what's different, right? So that we have new technologies coming at us, but it still comes back to having smart technologies and smart people. So I would certainly encourage everybody to be part of the MESA community. We always talk that members win when members contribute, so encourage you to take a look at MESA, come join the conversation, come lend your voice to the discussions. We don't have all of the answers, but we certainly have the right structure, I feel, and the right people committed to having the dialogue, and it only gets better, only gets stronger the more voices that we have here. So with that, I will sign us off, say thank you to everybody, encourage you to visit the MESA website, keep an eye out for the next round of this program, and to join us inside of MESA. Thank you very much.